Hello and welcome. I'm really glad you're here. Wherever you are right now, you don't need to change anything. You don't need to sit differently, think differently, or prepare yourself in any special way. This time is simply for listening. You might be doing something else while this plays in the background. That's completely fine. This is not a lesson that needs your full attention. It's a space where English can exist naturally, without pressure. Today we're spending time with everyday English. Not English that tries to impress. Not English that feels distant or difficult. Just English that fits quietly into real life. For many people, English feels like something separate from who they are. It feels like a subject, a task, something they have to face when they feel ready. But that moment of feeling ready often never comes. Life is busy, the mind is full, and English stays on the side, waiting. This is where frustration begins. People don't stop learning English because they don't care. They stop because learning feels heavy. It feels like one more thing to manage in an already full day. Over time, English becomes connected to stress. Just hearing it can make the body tense. The shoulders rise. The mind prepares for difficulty. This reaction is not about ability. It's about experience. When learning has been linked to pressure for a long time, the brain learns to protect itself. And protection looks like avoidance. Daily English works differently because it changes the relationship. It removes the feeling of effort before learning even begins. Instead of asking you to focus harder, it allows you to stay exactly where you are. You don't need silence. You don't need a notebook. You don't need motivation. You only need exposure. Exposure does not mean understanding everything. It means being present with the sound. Language lives in sound before it lives in rules, before grammar, before structure. When you listen regularly, your ears begin to recognize patterns, not because you analyze them, but because repetition makes them familiar. This familiarity is quiet. You don't notice it building, but it changes how English feels. At first, English may sound fast or unclear. That is normal. It doesn't mean you are behind. It means your brain is still adjusting. The brain needs time to separate sounds, to notice where one word ends and another begins, to understand rhythm. This is not something you can force. It happens naturally with listening. Many learners believe they should understand every sentence. They feel uncomfortable when they miss parts. But real listening does not work that way. Even in your own language, you don't hear every word clearly. You understand meaning because your brain fills gaps automatically. This ability develops in English the same way, slowly, quietly. At first, understanding may come in pieces. A familiar phrase, a clear sentence, a moment where something makes sense without effort. These moments matter more than full understanding. They show that your brain is connecting. Daily English is not about control. It's about trust. Trusting that your mind knows how to learn language when it feels safe. Safety is often missing in traditional learning. Mistakes are corrected quickly. Silence feels uncomfortable. Progress is measured constantly. All of this creates tension. Here, there is no measurement, no comparison, no urgency. You are not late. You are not slow. You are simply listening. Listening allows English to enter without resistance. Over time, the sound of English becomes less sharp, less foreign, more familiar. You might notice that you don't pause the audio as often. You don't feel the need to translate everything. Your mind stays with the sound instead of fighting it. This is an important shift. When listening feels easier, confidence grows quietly. Not confidence to speak perfectly, but confidence to stay present. Staying present is the foundation of learning. Many people think confidence comes after fluency. In reality, confidence often comes before it. When English feels less threatening, you give yourself more chances to learn. You listen more. You avoid less. And this creates momentum. Everyday English is full of repetition. People use the same structures again and again. They rely on simple language to express complex ideas. Listening to this kind of English trains your intuition. You begin to feel which sentences sound natural, Not because you memorized them, but because you've heard them many times. This kind of knowledge stays longer. It doesn't disappear under pressure. It becomes part of how you understand the language. Daily English also teaches patience. There is no quick reward, no clear finish line, but there is continuity. Each time you listen, you add another layer, another small piece of familiarity. These layers build quietly. You may not notice change from one day to the next, but over weeks and months, something shifts. English stops feeling like an obstacle. It becomes something you can approach calmly. You don't feel the need to prepare yourself before listening. You just listen. This matters more than people realize. Learning does not only happen when you feel strong. It happens when learning feels possible. Daily English makes learning possible on ordinary days, on tired days, on busy days. It does not demand energy you don't have. This is why consistency becomes easier. Not because you push yourself, but because listening does not feel like work. English becomes part of your environment, like music playing softly, like a familiar voice in another room. You don't analyze every sound, but your brain is listening. This background listening still counts. It still builds familiarity. Over time, you may notice that you recognize words more quickly. You may understand meaning before translating. These moments are signs of internal change. Speaking is connected to listening more than we think. When you hear language often, your brain stores patterns. Later, when you speak, you don't create sentences from nothing. You recognize patterns you already know. This makes speaking feel lighter, less forced. Daily English prepares the ground before anything grows. You are not rushing toward fluency. You are building understanding. And understanding creates stability. Many learners feel disappointed because progress does not look dramatic. They expect sudden change, but language learning rarely works that way. It grows slowly, like familiarity between people. At first, everything feels new. Then slowly it feels known. This is the stage you are building. You don't need to control it. You just need to stay close to the language. Listening regularly creates closeness. English stops being something you face and becomes something you meet. Meeting is easier than facing. This episode is part of that meeting. You don't need to remember what you hear today. You don't need to repeat anything. Your presence is enough. As long as English stays in your life in a calm way, learning continues. You may not feel fluent yet. That's okay. Fluency is not built in one moment. It's built through familiarity, comfort, and time. You are already doing something important by listening. You are allowing English to exist without pressure, and that changes everything. As English becomes more familiar, something subtle begins to change in the way you listen. You stop trying to control the experience. You stop checking yourself. Instead of asking, "Do I understand this?" your mind starts asking nothing at all. You simply stay. This is where real listening begins. Many learners think listening means effort. They believe they must concentrate intensely or they are wasting time. But deep listening is not the same as hard listening. Hard listening creates tension. Deep listening creates openness. When you listen regularly, your brain learns how to relax into the language. It stops reacting with stress. It stops preparing for difficulty. And this changes everything. You may still miss words. You may still lose parts of sentences. But you don't panic anymore. You trust that meaning will come back. This trust is built through repetition. Not repetition of rules, but repetition of sound. Hearing English again and again in a calm state allows your brain to recognize structure without effort. You begin to notice how sentences usually start, how ideas are connected, how thoughts naturally end. This is not conscious learning. You are not studying patterns. Your brain is absorbing them. Absorption feels slow, but it is strong. Over time, English begins to feel less unpredictable. You sense where a sentence is going before it finishes. You understand the general direction even when details are unclear. This skill is essential in real communication. In real life, no one speaks perfectly. People hesitate. They correct themselves. They leave sentences unfinished. When you are used to natural English, these things do not confuse you. You stay with the speaker. You follow meaning instead of form. This is why daily exposure matters more than rare, intense study. Language is not a puzzle to solve once. It is a system your brain needs time to adapt to. Many learners feel blocked because they expect understanding to be complete. They think partial understanding means failure. But partial understanding is normal. It is the beginning of understanding. Your brain learns in layers. First, it recognizes sounds, then rhythm, then common phrases, then structure. Meaning becomes clearer as these layers connect. Daily English supports this process by allowing repetition without pressure. You hear similar ideas expressed in slightly different ways. You notice how simple language carries meaning. You are not memorizing. You are becoming familiar. Familiarity changes your emotional response to English. Instead of feeling tense, you feel curious. Instead of avoiding, you stay. This emotional shift is more important than grammar knowledge. Because when you feel calm, you give yourself time. And time is what language needs. Many people believe they lack talent for languages, but often they lack a safe environment. When learning feels unsafe, progress slows. Daily English creates safety by removing judgment. There are no mistakes here. There is no evaluation. You are not expected to speak. You are not expected to respond. Listening without pressure allows language to enter naturally. Over time, this affects speaking. You may notice that certain expressions come to mind more easily, not because you practiced them, but because they feel familiar. Speaking becomes recognition, not construction. You recognize phrases you have heard. You recognize structures that feel right. This is how fluency begins, not with perfect sentences, but with comfort. Comfort allows words to appear without force. Daily English also helps with confidence in unexpected situations. When you hear English outside of learning spaces, it does not feel foreign. You have heard it before. You recognize the rhythm. This recognition reduces fear. Fear often blocks understanding more than lack of knowledge. When fear disappears, comprehension improves. Listening regularly also helps your brain adjust to different voices, different speeds, different tones. You stop expecting English to sound one specific way. You become flexible. Flexibility is essential for real-life communication. No two speakers sound the same. No conversation follows a script. Daily listening prepares you for this variety. You don't need to understand every accent. You don't need to follow every detail. Your brain learns to adapt. This adaptation takes time, but it happens naturally when exposure is consistent. Consistency does not mean long sessions. It means regular contact. Even short listening moments matter. Your brain remembers sound. It remembers rhythm. Each time you listen, you strengthen familiarity. This is why returning to English often is more important than staying for a long time. Daily English fits into real life because it does not demand energy you may not have. On busy days, it can be background sound. On quiet days, it can be something you focus on more. Both are useful. Learning does not need to look the same every day. What matters is keeping the connection alive. Many learners stop because they feel disconnected from the language. Daily English keeps that connection gentle but steady. It reminds your brain that English is part of your world. Over time, this sense of belonging grows. English no longer feels like an outside system. It feels like something you are becoming familiar with. This familiarity reduces resistance. Resistance is what makes learning feel heavy. When resistance fades, learning feels lighter. Not easy, but possible. You may still have moments of confusion. That is normal. Confusion is part of learning. It does not mean you are failing. Daily English teaches patience with confusion. Instead of stopping, you keep listening. Instead of judging, you stay open. This openness allows understanding to develop naturally. You don't need to rush this process. Rushing creates tension. Language develops at its own pace. Your role is not to control it, but to stay close to it. Listening is a way of staying close without pressure. Over time, you may notice that English no longer feels like effort. It feels like presence. You hear it. You recognize it. You accept it. This acceptance is powerful. It allows learning to continue even when motivation is low. Daily English works on days when motivation is gone. You don't need to feel inspired. You just need to listen. Listening is enough. As you continue this journey, remember that progress is not always visible. Sometimes it is emotional. Sometimes it is subtle. Feeling calmer around English is progress. Staying longer with the language is progress. You are building something slowly and steadily, and this steady building leads somewhere meaningful. As time passes and English stays in your life this way, you may begin to notice something deeper than understanding words. You may notice a change in how you feel around the language. At first, English may have felt like a challenge waiting to happen, something that required strength, focus, or courage. But now it feels more familiar. Familiar does not mean easy. It means known. And what is known no longer feels threatening. This shift does not happen suddenly. It grows slowly through repeated contact, through hearing English in calm moments, through letting it exist without pressure. When English becomes familiar, your body reacts differently. You don't tense up as quickly. You don't feel the urge to escape. You stay. Staying is important. Staying allows your mind to process language naturally, not through force, but through presence. Language learning is not only a mental process, it is also emotional. If emotions are tense, learning slows. If emotions are calm, learning opens. Daily English creates this calm by removing expectation. There is no finish line here, no level to reach, no moment when you suddenly become ready. Instead, there is continuity. Continuity builds trust. Trust between you and the language. You trust that English can be part of your life without taking energy from you. You trust that listening is enough. This trust changes how you approach learning. You no longer wait for perfect conditions. You no longer postpone learning until you feel prepared. English becomes something you allow, not something you schedule. This matters because real life is unpredictable. Energy changes. Time changes. Daily English adapts to that. Some days you listen more carefully. Other days, English stays in the background. Both days count. Your brain does not stop learning just because attention changes. It continues to notice sound, rhythm, and structure. This is how language becomes internal. Internal language is not something you think about. It's something you recognize. Recognition is powerful. When you recognize language, you don't panic. You don't rush. You don't freeze. You stay connected to meaning. This connection supports speaking later. When you speak, you are not inventing language. You are using what feels familiar. Words appear because they have been heard many times. Sentences feel natural because they follow patterns you already know. This is why listening is so important. Not active listening that creates tension, but relaxed listening that creates familiarity. Daily English also changes how you see mistakes. When language feels familiar, mistakes feel less dangerous. They feel temporary. You understand that communication is not about perfection, it's about connection. This understanding reduces fear. Fear often blocks progress more than lack of knowledge. When fear is reduced, you try more. You listen more. You stay longer. And staying longer always leads to growth. Growth does not always feel dramatic. Often it feels quiet. It feels like English is no longer an obstacle. It feels like something you can move around inside. You may notice that you understand the general idea of conversations, even if you miss details. This is real comprehension. Real comprehension is not about catching every word. It's about following meaning. Daily English trains this ability gently. You hear how ideas connect, how people transition between thoughts, how tone carries meaning. These things are difficult to teach directly. but they are easy to absorb through listening. Over time, English becomes more predictable. Not boring, but understandable. Predictability reduces mental effort. You don't work as hard to follow the language. Your mind relaxes into it. This relaxation is where learning deepens. Many learners believe they must push themselves to improve. They believe effort equals progress. But language learning does not always follow that rule. Sometimes ease creates more progress than effort. Daily English allows learning to happen without exhaustion. It respects your mental space. This respect makes it easier to return. Returning is the most important part of learning. Not how long you study, but how often you come back. Daily English encourages return. Because listening does not feel heavy, you don't avoid it. And because you don't avoid it, English stays present. Presence builds familiarity. Familiarity builds confidence. This confidence is quiet. It doesn't show off. It doesn't rush. It simply allows you to stay with the language. Staying with the language changes your relationship to it. English is no longer something you have to learn. It becomes something you live alongside. This is a powerful shift. When English becomes part of your environment, learning continues even when you are not aware of it. Your brain keeps adjusting. It keeps connecting patterns. This process does not stop. As long as English remains present in your life, learning continues. There may be days when you feel tired, days when you feel unsure. That is normal. Daily English does not demand consistency and effort. It only asks for consistency and presence. You can show up tired. You can show up distracted. Listening still matters. Learning does not disappear on difficult days. It adapts. This adaptability is what makes daily exposure sustainable. Instead of burning out, you continue. Instead of stopping, you slow down. Slowing down keeps the connection alive. As this episode comes closer to its end, take a moment to notice how English feels right now. Not how much you understood, not how many words you recognized, but how it felt to listen. If it felt calmer, more familiar, less tense, that matters. That feeling is progress. Learning does not always announce itself. Sometimes it simply settles in quietly. English does not need to be conquered. It does not need to be forced. It can be allowed to exist in your day, allowed to grow slowly. You don't need to rush ahead. You don't need to catch up. You are exactly where you need to be in this process. Thank you for spending this time listening. Thank you for allowing English to be part of your day. If you found this episode helpful, you can support the channel by liking the video. It helps others find calm, simple English too. If you'd like to continue learning together this way, feel free to subscribe. And if you want to share your thoughts, experiences, or where you're listening from, you're always welcome to leave a comment. Thank you for being here. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.